there. We are recording Steve Weinberger, Frank Williams, Avid Brewing, Art Tatum Stop Time Series with Frank Williams. Frank, last one of the day. Let's make it count.
Yes. Are you ready? We're going to do, I think, Mr. Arthur Tatum Jr., better known as Art Tatum. Born in Toledo, Ohio in 1909. He is a piano player. And what a piano player. Mostly self-taught. Had some very serious vision issues. It probably was just bad cataracts. He had almost no vision in his left eye and very little in the right. Well, some people doubted how blind he really was because they say so for some reason he could play cards and shoot pool. So we don't know about all that, but by most accounts, he was considered blind, or legally blind, as the case may be. So he grew up in Toledo playing the piano and listening to recordings of the great stride pianists, James P. Johnson, Fats Waller, cats like that, and imitating what they did, playing mostly by ear. And people say he must have had perfect pitch because anything he heard the first time, he could play it right now. So this allowed him to progress very, very, very quickly, much faster than a normal person like myself. He also had this incredible technique. There were some people who suggested that perhaps because Art couldn't see so well, some of the time when he was copying people's recordings, he was listening to recordings that were made by two pianists, not one. And not knowing any better, he was trying to play both piano parts by himself. And that's how he got this incredible technique. What we know for sure is many piano players who first heard him play could not believe what they were hearing. Some actually quit playing, and others switched instruments. They're like, no sense me playing piano. Reminds me of Art Blakey. The first night he heard Errol Garner play, the club owner came to him and said, "Hey, Art." And I said, "What, man?" He said, "Have you figured out what you're gonna play next week? Because you ain't playing piano." That's right, Art Blakey started out as a piano player, but not after hearing Errol Garner. So Art Tatum was one of those guys that would make you quit playing the piano once you heard him. And most guys knew he had this sort of attitude, he had this sort of reputation around Toledo. A lot of bands came through Toledo at the time, Duke came through there, whatnot. And the smart ones would not go to a jam session with him. They'd go while he was playing a straight gig and just sit and listen. Because the last thing you want to do is be caught in a jam session with Art Tatum and have him make you look like a fool trying to play piano. You did not want that at all. So a lot of people made that mistake and they paid for it dearly. Some of them quit playing altogether. Now, somewhere as a young kid, not just his reputation grew, but his playing developed to the point that he actually started playing little commercial breaks on the radio. These commercial breaks were so popular that soon he had his own radio show. All right. Now you got this young 17-year-old kid who's on the radio, which means everybody is hearing this incredible piano player. So this reputation is growing more and more and more and more. Didn't matter. He's still playing Toledo, and maybe he's playing a couple of little regional gigs. Maybe he'll go over to Cleveland and play a gig. And maybe he'll go to Elyria, Ohio and play a gig. And maybe on a really good day, he'll try to go up to Detroit and play a gig. But he was staying right in his little circle, wasn't going too far because he had this problem with his sight. And although everyone knew that he was incomparable, he didn't believe it himself. He didn't believe it himself. But by 1932, he was feeling a bit more confident. And the great Adelaide Hall comes through with her show. At that time, she was the most beautiful and the most popular African-American performer in this country. Being written up in the Pittsburgh Courier and all the major black newspapers. And she convinced young Art to come to New York with her. And he did. And they get some gigs together here and there. And Art ends up landing a solo piano gig at the Onyx Club. Yeah, at the Onyx Club. He's playing at the Onyx Club. Solo piano and making good money. And now he's in New York and everybody's coming to check him out and people are going, oh Lord, this guy's doing something brand new, because stride piano was the strong thing. James P. Johnson, Fats Waller, those cats. Art Tatum at first, but then he started doing some different kind of harmonizations, different kinds of voicings, and sometimes what we call bitonality, playing in two different keys and really expanding the harmonic palette. Art was making modern jazz piano. You may say he is the bridge from stride piano to more modern piano, the same as, say, Earl Father Hines, who was another one of the people that Art looked up to. And of course, they look at him in fear, like, oh my God, this guy can play stuff we could never play. Well, then Adelaide Hall gets her great gig at the Harlem Opera House in 1933, and she goes on stage with a guitarist, and as the newspaper said, a blind pianist. And they were so excited about the performance that they didn't get any details. Didn't get the name of the songs, didn't get the name of the musicians. All they could say about the piano player was, he's blind and man, can he play. And now the word is getting around that he can really, really, really play. Yes. By the 40s, late 30s, things are kind of drying up a little bit. The economy is kind of sad. So Art decides that he's going to go back to Cleveland and play. And live in Toledo and play Cleveland and play local gigs and be safe. And that is what he did. But as soon as the economy turned around in the 40s, he gets back out on the scene and goes back to New York, and now he's this popular cat that's doing his thing again with great recognition for how strong his playing is. He actually gets an invitation to go to Europe because people are hearing these recordings, and mostly solo recordings. He mostly recorded as a soloist on the piano because he could do it all by himself. And at the most, with a trio, with a bass player and a drummer, or a bass player and a guitar player, or drummer and a guitar player, whatever trio he decided to use. But in Europe, he was struck by the fact that people did not talk when he was playing, like in America. And he found this exhilarating. I can hear myself, and these people respect me enough, they actually sit there quietly and listen as if they're interested in what I'm doing. That doesn't happen in America. Oh my God. So, after being in Europe for a while, when he comes back to America, he starts doing these jazz at the Philharmonic concerts, where they're in concert halls, where people do in fact sit quietly and listen. And he does fewer bars, but he does continue to do those bars. And he had this habit. What was the habit, Frank? Well, he'd play his gig, and when his gig was over, he would go to after-hours clubs and terrorize all the other piano players. So he'd play his gig to 1 o'clock in the morning and then go to an after-hours joint and play from 2 to maybe 5, 6 in the morning. That's what he did. And he always liked to drink. Did I say he liked to drink? Oh, he loved drinking whiskey. There was somebody who proposed that by 1950, 52, 53, Art Tatum within 24 hours would drink 2 quarts of whiskey and chase it with a full case of beer every 24 hours. Well, that's a lot of alcohol. And soon he started to have some problems with his renal system. And otherwise, we talking about some kidney failure is right around the corner for him. He continues to set the standard for what jazz musicians do. We go play gigs, and then after the gig, we go find a jam session, even when we're on the road, so we can exchange with other musicians, exchange musical ideas, have a good time, have a drink, you know, whatever that is, just have that whole family of musicians thing going on. I was on the road with my son years ago when we were at Delphi on Marcellus, and I remember flying to Buffalo to check him out, get in a hotel room, go to the gig. After the gig, they want to go to jam sessions. We go to 2 different jam sessions, and then they want to have breakfast. Well, we go have breakfast. By the time we finish breakfast, we walk out, the sun is up. In other words, I paid for a hotel room I never even used. But this is what jazz musicians do. This is the passion jazz musicians have for this music. And this is a tradition that may have been started by Art Tatum. Most certainly was his habit. And he continued to do this, even at the height of this consumption of alcohol. He was able to record 124 solo piano tracks in just a few days. 128. This is a man who's drinking 2 quarts of liquor and 24 beers every day. The rest of the story is, of all those 128, all but 4 were released, which means it didn't matter how much alcohol was in his system. When he sat down at the piano, magic happened. This is just who he was. This is just what he was. Later on, his health deteriorated. He stopped drinking. He lost weight. But unfortunately, the damage was already done. And way before his time, I think at the age of 47, Art Tatum died of kidney failure. I cannot tell you what a monster of a magician, and I say a magician, I meant to say musician, but perhaps magician is more accurate. This man was. He created magic on that piano. And there's no better way to learn this than to go listen to some of those piano recordings. Fats Waller and the boys were having a cutting session. And Fats doing his thing, handful of keys, and this guy's doing his little tunes and whatnot. And they say Art Tatum showed up and played T for Two, one of his favorite tunes, and Tag a Rag, and shut the house down. Later on another gig, Fats Waller is playing, the crowd's going crazy, Fats doing his thing, And Fats looks over his shoulder and he sees that Art Tatum walks in the room. And he grabs the microphone and he says, "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm just the piano player. God is in the house," referring to Art Tatum. In 1941, Art Tatum recorded an album called "God is in the House." Oh yeah. And in 1973, that's right, 1973, that album received a Grammy for Most Outstanding Solo Jazz Recording. So long after Art was gone, people were still discovering his genius and his magic, and we will continue to revere Art Tatum for a long time to come, because there will never be another one like him. Thank you so very much for taking this journey with me. The boy from Toledo. All right now. See you next time.